In today's video, we're going to be breaking down upcoming snowfall potential starting in just a couple of days, and there's a few more down the road as well. We're going to be going over severe weather threats across the southern and even some of the northern states, as well as numerous big-time storms heading through the United States over the next 10 to 15 days. We are looking for brand new clients on the commercial side for our company Prestige Weather, so if you are a business owner or an organization owner or anything of that nature, really, feel free to reach out to us. There's a Calendly link somewhere at the top of your screen, also in the description and pinned comment down below, where you can check it out, schedule a meeting with me, and see if our company is a good fit for yours. Let's dive into things. Let's take a look at later on this evening, and already we have some of that severe weather starting up. We have 1,005 here in eastern Texas following some pretty strong thunderstorms out ahead of it here for Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, maybe even extending up towards the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina. We also have some showery activity up here to the north, even some snowfall trying to mix in for Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas here. And that is leading towards some moderate to heavy snowfall in spots, I would say. Or rainfall, better yet. Saturday on March 9th, what we're seeing is 1,000 millibar low pressure center between North Carolina and Virginia. And actually, this is a secondary low. The primary system here is all the way up in Canada. What we're seeing is a cold front stretching down here, likely a cold front stretching down on this top low as well, with a warm front well to the north. We have warm and humid air moving its way out ahead of this system, and then cold air and drier air overall swinging underneath. And this is going to lead towards potential severe weather in the southeast, and definitely at least a chance of thunderstorms here in this southeast corridor. Now, as we head towards Sunday, what we see is we're left with colder temperatures here in the east overall. Definitely below freezing for most areas, even during the high temperatures. Overnight Saturday into Sunday, what we saw is the Catskills and Adirondacks dealing with some heavier snowfall. Same story for the rest of New England, especially in the northern half. A stronger low trying to move offshore down to a 985 millibar low pressure center in southern New Hampshire. And this leads towards moderate to heavy snowfall for New England, portions of the mid-Atlantic, and the surrounding northeast areas. And by the time we're reaching that evening, we see some back-end snowfall from this system reaching as far southward as southern New England, northern Pennsylvania, and northern New Jersey. So a pretty impactful mid-March snowstorm here from what we're seeing. By the time we're reaching Tuesday afternoon, and this will be on March 12th, we see that the east is a lot quieter. Overall, warmer and more humid as we see these temperatures spreading in. The midweek to late week next week looks beautiful, guys. We're talking 70s and even 80s for a lot of folks. So the first warmer or even hot week for a lot of folks. And it's going to be sustained, like I said, from about Wednesday at least until Saturday, Sunday timeframe, when our next round of storms will move through, likely cooling things down. So we're going to see this happen over the course of the next couple of days here on this model run in just a couple of minutes. What we see is that there is some snowfall and rainfall depending on your elevation, impacting areas in the northwestern states, and all of this storminess is what's eventually going to move eastward. Here's the afternoon of Wednesday, and what we're seeing is again that warmth and humidity pushing northward through these eastern regions. Overall, relatively dry, especially if you're in this corridor. There is some storminess here across some of the deeper south areas. Also, for some of the Great Lakes, we have some showers moving through, but nothing too strong as far as sustained storms. You have to travel a lot further west to find that, and it's going to be a low located in southeastern Colorado. We have moderate to heavy snowfall throughout the Rockies. Rainfall already starting out to the north of this system, and this is going to be our next severe weather event. We see this starting out Thursday evening, and what we're seeing is this low is now over the borders of Oklahoma and Kansas. We have a pretty strong thunderstorm corridor here for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and maybe as far eastward as Mississippi and Alabama. We have showery activity here on the warm front side of things, where this warmth is able to surge northward, and likely a cold front is developing to the south of this system. By the time we reach Friday afternoon, what we're seeing is this low is now located over southeastern Iowa, cold front somewhere in there, like I mentioned. Warm front is clearly seen there to the east of this, so we have that surging warmth and humidity to the north, and then the drier, colder air trying to swing underneath here with this cold front. And what this is going to lead to is some strong thunderstorms and potential for severe weather here in this area for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana there. Maybe even more far spread than that. I think this is a pretty big area of severe weather, which makes this in particular very, very interesting to me. By Saturday afternoon, like I mentioned, we have very warm temps in the east, but we do have this storm now located up in Canada, cold front underneath, and likely this is going to cool everything down. Thunderstorms for this entire area is going to be a possibility, and definitely some severe weather implications in there as well. By the time we reach Sunday, we see another low tries to form over the Delmarva, kind of leading to a 1-2 punch here. We have a little bit of a warm front there as warm air is still trying to surge near the coast. But this cold, dry air is rapidly approaching. And we are going to see a full-blown cool down likely in the east after this is all said and done. But really, we're going to deal with a lot of storminess, especially in the southeast beforehand, because this southeast ridge is really trying to put up a fight. So what we see happen is likely a stationary front set up in here somewhere. And oftentimes when we see these stationary fronts, I think a good way to look at it is the warmth is pushing very, very equal to the cold. So we see something like this set up. Again, the cold to the north, warmth to the south. So equal push is how you can imagine it, so that front is not moving. And what ends up happening oftentimes is these storms, instead of moving progressively like this, like they would in a cold front, we see them actually kind of just move along that area of frontal boundary, and we get training is what it's called. So you can imagine every cell and every shower along this area as a train car, okay? And those are just kind of steadily moving in a more linear fashion across this frontal boundary, as opposed to that whole frontal boundary swinging. That is staying stagnant and the storms are moving along it. And that is, I think, the situation that we see setting up here for a little while. And we can see that motion here. Watch this area I'm going to draw with an arrow. Watch this. This is the flow that we're seeing along that frontal boundary. You see how it's not really progressing, it's just moving right along it. And that in particular can lead towards large amounts of rainfall. So this entire area where we see this training taking place, we're going to be watching closely for flooding implications, thunderstorms, severe weather. All of that is going to be possible along this area, because we're seeing 1 to maybe even as much as 3 days of, constant storms berating this area because of this stationary front ordeal that we have in place. Let's see what the GFS model has to say. We see that event number 1 come through. We see the snowfall in the northeast, followed by colder air, the drier, warmer conditions, followed by this kind of training here that we see for a couple of days. So starting out on maybe the Friday, Saturday time frame, and not really coming to an end until about Monday. So the entire weekend may feature this type of a pattern, with, again, very wet conditions, in particular for this area. Again, I'm going to draw the arrows so that we can all kind of see it here. But what we'll see is that the flow looks a lot like this. So it's a little less consistent here than the European model, but we are seeing those storms one after another kind of move through this area in that same direction. So the same things apply here. We have agreement on both models that numerous storms moving along the line will be taking place. And again, that is that particular feature that we watch for in heavy rainfall to even flooding events like this one. So I am a little bit concerned there. What we're left with after the weekend, though, because again, Wednesday through Sunday is extremely warm and humid, kind of feeling more like April or May here in the east. What we end up getting, though, starting kind of Monday timeframe, once all those storms have moved through, is very, very cold compared to normal conditions. We're going to feel a lot more like late February here, perhaps even mid-February, but it's going to be March 19th. So in late March, we're going to have more like late February temperatures here in the east, especially in these blue areas where we're seeing sub-freezing temperatures. Certainly very, very cold. Again, for a lot of you people that watch a lot of my videos, we have a positive PNA out west. That stands for Pacific North American Oscillation. In its positive phase, all it means is warmth out west. In its negative phase, that would mean cold out west. And what happens when we see this warmth build out west in a positive PNA like we see here is it causes this warmth to surge up the west coast. And sure enough, we can see that when making its way well into Canada. And that causes all the cold that would be there to basically pour to the east, because it can't go to the west. We have this surging warmth. It has to go somewhere, so it goes east. And we see this very, very often. And this is what basically allows for these unseasonably cold temperatures to take place. Also, you might note that there is some snowfall opportunities in there. It certainly will be cold enough, so if we see any storms move along this area, we could be looking at a pretty snowy situation, such as this one on Friday the 22nd. We have a 998 millibar low pressure center up there in Canada, and we see actually some moderate to heavy snowfall impact the northeast again. But look what happens once we reach the 24th, okay? We start to get more cold and storms out west, and we get this surging warmth and humidity again. And once again, we move right back into this very stormy in the east pattern. By the time we're reaching the very late March timeframe, let's call it after the 22nd. So moving back into that wet spring-like pattern, and I call it wet because I think that it is particularly high precipitation. In March here in Virginia, I track all of the local weather. I have a weather station in my backyard. I measure all the rainfall, all the temperatures, and I document it in a spreadsheet. And in Virginia here, where I'm from, we average about 3 inches of rainfall in the month of March. As of this recording, it's only 5 p.m. on March 8th, but we already have over 5 inches of rainfall on the month here in Virginia. So we're already double that, or approaching double that average, and we're not even a third of the way into the month. So already this has been an extremely wet month of March, and we don't really expect that to, at least for a long time, end by any means. It looks to actually significantly tack onto those totals, not only from that period where we see that stationary front, but perhaps even in the late March timeframe here as well, which is very, very concerning, as the ground conditions are already extremely saturated. And I'm sure it's the same way in a lot of the east here. The total precipitation, I mean, we have a lot out west. We've seen that for days now. The southeast area in particular is where I'm very worried, because again, we're seeing the training take place here. All of these reds in here are 2 to 5 inches of additional rainfall that's expected. We have these browns down here for the deeper south, which, again, they do average higher precipitation down there, by the way, but I think they're already well over their average and expecting a whole lot more here coming up. Those browns are 5 to 10 inches of additional total precipitation. That would be absolutely staggering, especially considering the amount that they've already seen. Total snowfall on the European model here, we're seeing a lot out west, and over the past few days, as I've mentioned, this is not very surprising or any different than anything we've seen over the past like 2 or 3 months, and that's how it goes out west. But for the northeast, we actually do expect quite a bit. We'll zoom in here, but there is a couple of snowfall opportunities in there, and this leads to 10 inches plus, perhaps for the Adirondacks, Catskills here, the Green Mountains that we're seeing here in Vermont, the White Mountains up through northern Maine here as well. We're all expecting 10 inches plus. We see some snowfall extending all the way down the Appalachian Mountain Range down to West Virginia, some of northwestern and overall northern Pennsylvania, and then overall how I would look at it is the northern half of New England. That's where we can expect 1 to 2 inches or more of accumulating snowfall perhaps, but it does really, really depend on your elevation. I mean, we can see the mountain ranges here in higher totals right there. That's your Adirondacks, Catskills, Green Mountains, White Mountains. And then we see our river valleys in between New York and Vermont there, in between New Hampshire and Vermont. We see those 2 river valleys dealing with much less snowfall. So this tells me, and it should tell you as well, that the elevation is particularly playing a massive role here, which shouldn't be surprising. We're into the spring, temperatures are a little bit warmer, which means those river valleys are likely to be above freezing while the mountaintops are still below freezing. That can be a good explanation for this particularly intense contrast between elevations. Total snowfall on the GFS model here, again, a ton out west, but we're not going to talk too much about that. But for the northeast, I want to zoom in again. We do see a little bit more on this model as opposed to that European model. Let me go back to our GFS model run here. And as you can see, again, 10 inches plus, maybe even west of the Finger Lakes. But again, for the Catskills and Adirondacks, the Green Mountains, and the White Mountains up through northern Maine, looks about the same, except we're seeing a little bit of higher totals here. This GFS model's been doing this, where we're seeing some amounts estimated to be over 2 feet. I think that's a little aggressive. Perhaps, maybe Mount Washington might see that much or something like that, but In general, I'm thinking more like 10 to maybe 15 inches there for the Adirondacks, Catskills, Green Mountains, White Mountains, and northern Maine. By the way, that's not just from one storm, that's just the next 10 to 15 days, how much I expect to see. And I think that, thinking in terms of climate average, I would say that's only slightly above average to maybe, full on above average, but it's nothing crazy. We're not talking about mid April here, we're talking about mid to late March, which still oftentimes is a wintry month. Anyway, we're going to keep you guys up to date with all of these things as we just progress through the coming weeks. So be sure to subscribe as we do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below and I'll see you guys in the next video.